Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the exponential success coach. Every so often, you meet someone who you just can't wait to talk to again. And my guest today is one of those exceptionally special people. He's a man who brings out the best in others. In fact, he's been doing that for MTV stars as an executive producer. He's been doing that for brand ambassadors and business owners. And today he's going to do that for and with us. He's an Emmy-Award winning media advisor, a podcast host, an author, and more than that, he's a really great human, it's so good. Here with me is Vinnie Postestivo. Vin, welcome.
Yes. By the way, thank you for such a gracious introduction. I have a lot to live up to in that, so I'm pulling my sleeves back.
Tell me what part of that isn't true. You are a great human, and everything else is just the stuff you've done. So
it is, isn't it? It's all breadcrumbs, dust in the wind. It's a cyclical journey. It's around planet, and the good part about it is coming around on the trail end of said journey and being able to chart new territory.
Very true.
I love that part of it.
Very true. And you've branched out on your own, so we'll talk a little bit about that. When you and I were speaking, I had the pleasure of being able to talk with you. It's been a little while, but it's things stick. So
where to start?
You started with
Go gentle on me, doc.
You have a psych background, sort of. You learned that parents make mistakes. And you also sort of stumbled into this brand awareness. So let's do this. Let's talk about some of the things you're doing now. Mm-hmm. And then we get to wind back the clock and go into some of the things that you kind of led you to now.
Oh yeah, well this is like this is like what's happening with Marvel Universe right now. We've been celebrating superpowers for so long, and then suddenly there's like this big need to have to go all the way back to the origin story to understand how we got those superpowers. And I have to say, because the stories have changed. I know the power of story is something that people talk about, but how much power can a story have if stories have the ability to change as quickly as they do? The facts and the characters, those don't tend to change, but the story changes based on the narrator, based on the audience, for sure. I mean, we've heard adult nursery rhymes in our childhood nursery rhymes in comedic context. So
yes. And what I grew up with was kind of brutal compared to what people are growing up with now in terms of nursery rhymes, right? And childhood stories. So,
but even just what you used to be able to, what the jokes on SNL in the 60s and 70s would never fly nowadays either, and for good reason. And for good reason too. And they were in a good place, in a good public forum to get to work that out. Levity has this ability to break barriers. It's something I learned early in my career. Something I think that I had to tap into in my childhood to get out of dark, deep situations that I didn't choose to put myself in. And I think a lot of people can relate to having parents and maybe with addictions and in and out of rehab, and maybe unfortunately, but I'll have a lot more in common with people who have had that type of childhood, who've maybe been one of many siblings or the oldest, where they feel the responsibility and the weight of the world falls on your shoulder. If you were a young male in the 80s, this term, well, you're the man of the house, this idea of like there needing to be a man of the house, and for that to fall on the youngest of kin. It's an interesting dynamic to have been born into, but I was given the opportunity to spend a lot of time, as we mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time with psychologists as a child. I sat in that seat and I played chess and Othello, and I played board games, not even realizing what they were getting out of me, the places that they were getting me to open up to understand. But it was levity that let me get through the darkest moments. And that's something that I carried with me throughout my entire career. Not to say that I make light of any situation, but I choose to, and by the way, it doesn't mean I don't cry. I cry at like everything. I cry at when kids figure out their superpowers. This is so silly, but in movies, when kids figure out they have like a superpower or they do something amazing, oof, you give me a cry in a heartbeat with that kind of storyline. Or Yellowstone's got me going crazy too. Just very emotional on that series. But
isn't that great though? The whole idea of because that theme is you come into understanding who you are, and so that's so relatable, right? It's so relatable. You as a good human, you as an individual, and I'm talking to every single audience member who's listening to this or watching this, the whole idea of understanding like, wow, I am somebody special in this sea of other special people. Like I have something to bring. And this is so true for each one of us. And for you, I mean, you went through some severe adversity. We don't have to touch on all of it. You've alluded to it. But the idea is you came through it, and levity, good humor. I mean, that there are other people that turned very dark with it. It's like got very bitter about, why me? And instead of why me, you did this almost immediate bounce into, welp, it is me, and I got something to offer. It is me. I'm here. And I think it also taught you how to look almost objectively at other people, right? And that's what made you, I think, a good producer, right? You get to see what's good in others. I
get the best and the worst, right?
You do, because
you can measure hot, you can measure cold. That's for sure. I'll tell you. I was the kid in school who would get picked on in class, and then at the end of class, I would go up to the teacher and I would say, you know what? They just don't get it yet. They just don't understand how mean they're being when they say those words to me. So I don't take offense to it. My teacher would get upset sometimes, and rightfully so. But there was this like passive aggressive, I don't want to say passive aggressive part of me, but there was this passive part of me, and maybe it is passive aggressive. I don't know if that's good or bad. But there was this piece of me that, yeah, right. Like I'm putting it before you, literally. And there was this piece of me that just, it was acceptance. It wasn't passive or aggressive. It was acceptance. This moment stinks, and I wish I didn't have to go through it. And, great, second, third, fourth grade for me were hard because I went to a private school I went to a Baptist private school in Staten Island, which I guess we were really focused on our reading and our writing skills were really, really focused. So when I got to public school, I felt I could read a lot quicker. I could write a lot more than most of my teammates. I was going to say, oh, I love that. But my classmates, and I would get frustrated. And I remember sitting in that class being like, let me just say it for them. Let me just finish the sentence for them, because they just, wanting to help them, but realizing that that's not coming across, that beautiful gesture isn't coming across and being received the way that it's meant to be, especially when someone is trying to figure it out and wants to and has the right to figure it out themselves. But it was in that chair in psychology that I had that awareness, that greater awareness, that almost awareness of my actions as a child. I think kids now, for better or for worse, I think for better, have the ability to see some type of likeness or image of themselves of social media. So there is an awareness of how they fit in the world, because that's the world that we live in now. Whereas when I grew up, we knew what we didn't know, but we didn't know how much we didn't know.
True. True. I think, you had an advantage of becoming what's known as actor observer. So you could be in the moment and above that moment watching yourself. And that is actually a hugely developed skill that most adults don't have. And I do think that with social media, holding up the phone and, projecting a certain persona,
Mm-hmm.
It does allow for, well, this is who I'm going to show up as, but it's not exactly the same as what you did, which is actor observer.
Mm-hmm.
You were watching yourself in trying to project, this is who I want to be. Like, let them look at me. And it's still about look at me, and with the hope that they'll be perceived a certain way, not the objective, what am
Yeah.
I trying to do?
Oh,
Really,
yeah.
really, what am I trying to do? Right. So there's
I
still
look
this.
the way you describe it, it almost starts to feel like a superpower. But I'm like, wait, but you don't understand. I had to do that, and back then, i.e., before social media and the internet, back then we had dozens, if not hundreds, of different types of groups, different types of friends that like different types of music. And I had my youth group friends here, and I had my math group friends there, my high school, my gay secret friends here, and my theater friends there, and ironic that those two friends weren't in the same friend group. It drove me
I
crazy.
was just thinking.
Stereotypes. But it was that innate need to fit in that I wanted so bad in high school for sure. And I know I didn't get it, but I wanted so bad just to fit in that I would change. You looked at my wardrobe, you'd think it was like Halloween every day. Like, am I goth Vinnie? Am I like which pick a version? And so much of that teen part of my life, wanting to please people, wanting to be accepted, it's a defense mechanism to want to be. I mean, it's a survival instinct to want to be accepted. If I'm not in, I'm out. If I'm out, a lot can happen to people who are out. So I'm looking at it as how do I stay in, but still stay myself
That's
without
huge.
Compromising.
That in itself is like, that is the existential quest. And here's the thing, you talked about change and, depending on the story and depending on the audience, the truth is that we believe that if we become one thing, if we become this one person, we'll be in forever. And the truth is we need to keep evolving.
Mm-hmm.
One of the strangest things about adolescence is that people try so hard to stand out in order to fit in that they end up becoming very samey.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, am I goth? Am I theatrical? Am I what am I today? And it's like, well, you're doing it to fit in. There's so much.
It also makes me a great karaoke bar. You throw any song on, and I don't know the lyrics to anything, but I get the musicality to it.
Sure, that's awesome. The whole idea of this has become a theme in my recent podcast, which is interesting. The idea of in group, out group, and interloper, and really, it's a matter of, well, who do you want to be? Because you'll define your group versus trying to fit in, and I think that is the personal quest that we finally get through at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I don't actually have to fit in. I don't actually have to continue to seek approval from others. I'm me, and people either will like me or not. That's okay.
I just got goosebumps. I wrote down active observer. Those two words together really resonate with me.
Actor observer, you're in the moment, you're watching the moment. Yeah.
When you talk about me being aware of the group, it makes me aware that I'm also actively able to observe being inside and outside the group.
Yes.
You're talking to the guy who helped cast Housewives of New Jersey and Housewives franchises that have lasted 20 years, which are the social Laguna Beach, The Hills on MTV. Like, these are social constructs that are literally about being on the inside or the outside. It's literally, when you look at the construct, when you look at the data points of story and character, and where those story engines are pulling conflict from, usually, it's in or out. And that's brilliant to think of. It's funny to think of now how I've been able to I've been put in really pristine situations, places where I can't disrupt. but I have to disrupt, but I can't disrupt. I can't change reality because we're about to capture reality, but I also have to figure out what the opportunity and promise is. And a lot of that has to do with that sort of like group mentality of in or out. I love how the Housewives has evolved a bit more to be less about it. It's less about the group and it's more about individual. It feels more individual one-on-one as opposed to the ensemble piece, which was originally what I was set out to do, cast an ensemble. Now it feels like 6 individual strong storylines that interweave together. And like that construct has changed since, early reality TV days, but probably for that reason. Because that's doom, in or out of social constructs. That's social doom.
It totally is. I will admit to having seen about 0 Housewives episodes, and
it's okay. Osborne, I can go down to any Osborne's, Newlyweds. I don't want to beg a tongue.
I've seen pieces. Okay. And I understand I understand the concept. It's just. And there are a lot of my friends watch them.
They become cultural examples. Oftentimes, they become relevant. They become part of the lexicon and vocabulary because of the familiarity of complexity in relationships that you can now say, oh, someone was being Ramona about blah blah, and we now have that understanding of that.
And that is the key, is that we find ourselves in each of the stories. And so for, when you describe, we started as a group and now we've got 6 individuals that we're following that whose lives intertwine. That's brilliant. That piece is brilliant because we will find ourselves as individuals, either pro this person or shunning this person, and again then that person's in group or out group with each of us. So it's brilliant how you've done this. And I shared with you that I don't watch it because I'm not coming to you as kind of a fanboy. It's like, I love what you do. I love how you pull people together.
Oh yeah. Thanks.
And I love how you get to, like, your perspective it's so good. And I guess that's what I'm after too, is what do you have like in in weeding out the drama while creating drama, because conflict is watchable. Right. But in weeding out the drama and working with the individuals, what are you noticing, and what kind of are there leadership lessons along the way that you can offer, as insights? It's like, hey, you don't have to be this in order to get that, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things that come to mind, especially in this like multimedia world that we live in, there are some trigger words: transparency, authenticity. Let's talk about that for a second. So transparency is really interesting in the reality TV world. The network can only edit the actions that you give it. It's very hard, to be honest. Also, it doesn't have control. The network doesn't have control over your social media or your private media, meaning your blogs or your newsletters. So you do have an opportunity to show up in a public forum that is an image that you don't have control over, and then have the ability to be transparent in your actions on other platforms and allow people in on the process. That's really helped people who, we're getting in this world, and 2023 is this era of AI. There is a lot of hype right now around something called Chat GPT.
It's amazing,
and it's and it really truly is. I'm not going to lie. I literally took time-coded notes from a podcast. I said, I'm Vinnie Postestivo. My podcast is I have a podcast. Write a podcast description using these time-coded notes. and it gave me a phenomenal. And then I was like, oh yeah, you're good. You're that good. Give me a 600-word essay so I can so I can put it on like a newsletter. And it did that. And I said, now I need good headlines and 50 tweets. Give me 50 tweets about, and it kept going on and on. So the input dictates the output. If anything, that's, lesson number 2 there is the input dictates the output. That's definitely a leadership role that I've learned from this. I think that's why I like podcasts so much. It's Play-Doh, it's input, it's raw material that is unsullied, often unfiltered, and generally speaking, pure. It's because we, the people, own it, and it's coming from us. We have so much control over it in development, and by making it allows us to take it to the next level. But the input dictates the output. That's based on if I'm, that's anyone out there who's looking to communicate. And we talked about some of these shows before. Most people don't watch movies. Most people can talk about a movie just based on the amount of trailers, that they've seen from it. Most people will see the trailer. More people will see the advertisement than the episode. This is also a big reason why I ask people in podcasting to make sure they're creating ads, because that more people will hear your ad and see your ad than actually hear or see your podcast. Like that's going to happen. So like, why not start with numbers that are already in your favor? That sounds like a great place to start. Maybe that's like leadership lesson number 3 is like knowing where to start. Often people want to start pending where they want to end, or there's some type of journey. For me, it's about creating space, grace, and the time to do it. So I think that knowing when and how and where to start to kick a project off so it's sustainable. That's for me the piece that I'm looking for. I look at some of the series that are still on MTV. There's a show called The Challenge, which is a show where they for Gen Z, it's so weird. I'm thinking of which generation is watching MTV right now. The Gen Alpha actually generation, where they push them to their physical and mental, challenge. They challenge them to their maximum. And
amazing.
It's been cool to be part of those giant TV franchises that have sustained now 20 years and dozens and dozens of giant pieces of talent that have come from it. I think as a testament to knowing where to start, creating it with the right people in mind. The input dictates the output. If the right people from the get-go aren't attached to the project or helping you, if you're not getting your information from a source that sweetens the conversation, that complements the conversation, we have so many options now. And I think that's really important.
That's huge, right? So know where to start, I love create space and grace and get support. I think that's huge too.
By the way, creating space and grace. Do you know what that looks like for like SNL? Those, you see those colored index cards, and you ever see like if you ever watch like a TV show and they have like on a bulletin board and there's like index cards. That's space and grace. That means I need space to create like episodes and time, and I need to be able to remove the graces. I need to be able to change that card out if that card needs to be moved someplace else. I'm going to create it and it's going to stay. It's just not going to stay put. And that's that grace ability to it. I need to have those boundaries in place to be able to start creating, because creating is the act of taking a concept internal and making it external. It's an internal idea that gets executed externally. So if I can't let go of the concept in its entirety, then I'm not done creating it yet.
I love that. That's brilliant. I'm writing. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm writing. So this is awesome.
You are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well-being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
I had a question for you about mindset steps, like how to get clarity for creatives and how to take inspired action. What What,
Yeah.
how, it's sort of like,
Yeah.
all
Where
right,
does
I
it
want to create. You say it's internal and it's external, and I'm sitting here with a blank keyboard or blank, screen blinking at me. Like, now what?
Yeah, right. I don't know if you're like me, it starts with the title. I'm like, I will not write the first paragraph if I do not feel good about the title. It's a horrible writer's trait, by the way, and I hope not everyone has that. But if you do
My
relate
first
to
book,
that,
my first book changed titles 3 times, and
did it? But did
yeah,
you need the title first to be
I
able to
did.
then write
I
it?
did, because
Or
that for me was sort of like the out.
yeah,
That's my outcome. That's what I'm after. But
yeah,
then, like, my first book, called Choosing Your Power, it started as a worthy struggle, and it was about
yeah,
the human struggle. And then I realized, darn it, everything I'm writing about is struggle.
yeah,
And I don't want to write a book about struggle. I want to write a book that's more inspiring than that. And I wrote this book called so I changed the title, and it was called Better Every Day. And it was like, that's
yeah.
awesome. Better Every Day. And then as I concluded that, it turns out that URL was owned by an acne medicine company. And I'm like, I just can't. So I did some rewrites, because what is this about? It's choosing
Yeah.
your power. It's how to step in and choose your power. By the way, the whole thing with Post-its.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I wrote. I
The grace
wrote.
of Post-its.
I write actually my books. There's a wall where I have lines of, this is going to be a chapter. Oh no, this belongs over here. Oh, this goes
Yep.
here. This doesn't belong at all. Like, and so I love that you're talking about, like, how to make that happen.
Now imagine that with a lot of women's names with a lot of Italian last names as the casting board for Real Housewives of New Jersey. That's what it's about. That's exactly what it. And you'd even take a little string sometimes and start to attach them so people understood, and then eventually we created actual character maps. I love hearing your book title. Linear experience. You went from identifying the pain, which was struggling, realize that strugglers don't want to read a book about struggling. It's like how to not sink, says someone who's like trying to
right.
So and you turn it in here. So there's this pain, drain, and gain concept that I have there. There's a pain that people there's a reason why people aren't doing what they're doing. There's a drain, there's a physical, a mental, and emotional, or time kind of fits into both of those, component to what it takes to be successful. And then ultimately where you landed, which is the gain. So maybe to answer this question, I would say I would write down the pain, the drain, and the gain of what this book will be. And you'd be surprised at where your title might live in between where you're coming from, where you want to go, and where you can take all of us. That's where I would start on a blinking page right now, is identify the pain, the drain, and the gain of the audience that I know that I want to talk to, because I want as much as it's not. I haven't had like a lifelong. I'm starting to laugh about like how people fantasize over maybe like a wedding for their entire life, and they have a certain way it needs to be. I'm so lucky that I haven't been dreaming about a podcast my entire life, so it doesn't need to be anything else other than what you want it to be. I get to own it. I get to serve it to you. And if it's not in your language, your vocabulary, if it doesn't speak to your culture, your community, and because those are all the places that I want to make impact. And if I can figure out the pain, the drain, the gain of what this podcast could, present, or this creative project or whatever it is could present, then I feel like that's a great place to start. I started my journey, and ultimately ended up calling my podcast I Have a Podcast for 3 reasons really. One is a nod to my childhood. I grew up around adults who introduced themselves and they said, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I'm an alcoholic." And I loved understanding who was and who wasn't recovering, because it helped me know who had a skill set, a vocabulary, a language that I knew I could talk to them in. Just with 12 simple steps, I could relate to someone in such a simple way that allows me to connect with them on a deeper level. And podcasters have a special skill. We've got to create and research and output and input. And there's so much that it's so much more than just creators, or I'm not taking anything away from influencers and social media content, but the podcasting art form requires a different type of creative skill set. And if I can meet someone and they tell me I have a podcast, and I know, I know you're my type of person, whether you like it, because whether you have a podcast that you love and listen to, or have one that you record, your own, that's my type of person. Also, I wanted it to be a little clunky. I want people to see what I'm going to do with I Have a Podcast, how I turn it into a TV show and a radio show and a Google News verified news platform for podcast discovery. In 2023, I hope to be able to launch maybe more of like a podcast directory. So I'm all about growth and distribution. And I think that there's going to be a need for curation in the future. So anything that I can do, for that. But it starts with getting clear on the goal. And I would start with that, the pain, the drain, the gain. The second thing I would do mindset in terms of mindset steps is come up with a strategy. And in terms of the strategy, I would focus on who, not how. It's very easy to come up with a list of things that need to be done. Those are all going to change. Technology is going to change. All of a sudden, there's going to be this chat GPT thing where you don't need to spend a penny anymore on copywriting, even though you should definitely learn. There's going to be ways to master it for sure. But I'm excited about how technology has come to place, and that allows you to create tactics. It allows you to take inventory of the people around you so that you can develop. And in developing the concept, you develop a creative concept and also understand how you're going to distribute it, right? If you're distributing it and developing it, simultaneously, you have the ability to have that distribution partner be involved in and maybe buy into the concept, or even be able to give you some information that will make it more successful for their audience. And I think that the fifth step for that mindset hack is just take inspired action. If it's not fun to make, it's not going to be fun to watch. It's not. They say in TV, you can't polish a turd. So like you can edit something until you want, and then after a while, you're going to have to put it in black and white and pretend like it, or maybe turn it into a podcast and just keep it audio where the video doesn't have to complicate things. But anyway,
that's great. I was told that phrase, by the way, when I took over a very particular club. And they were, people were like, yeah, sorry that you're the president now, because you can't polish it. It's like, that's awesome.
It's a funny old, I can't believe I even said that. But that's, now you know why I left TV, the way they talk, those savages. But also it speaks to the temporary, I don't know, the lifeline, I don't know, it makes it feel like there's a lot more options in the public space than there are in the independent space in terms of a growth. And I think that as independent creators, we have so much more space to do what we can do that larger companies can't do, and also that I really believe in like this podcast space right now.
I want to back up and just highlight some of what you said, because I think it actually speaks to not just podcasting, not just writing or blogging. I think it speaks to any of us who have any kind of goal. And, you'll find yourself in your life. We are into a new year. This is awesome. Now what? And so you take inventory, and what is the pain? What is your current circumstance, right? What is the drain? What's pulling on you versus where do you want to be? And then what steps do you need to take to get there? What's the gain? What's the outcome you're after? So I want to take what you've said and make it even more general, because I think that this lesson can actually help everybody, honestly. You get clear on the goal. Right? Yeah. You get clear on, well, okay, if I'm here and what I really want is there, I have to do something different in order to move from here to there. I call that the GPS. Like, know where you're starting, know what your outcome is,
Yep.
and then you got to move in order to get guidance. Right. So that's that. Get clear on the goal. Focus on who, not how. Also, again, about support. Also, again, about who's watching you, who's got to be in your circle, who's not in your circle. Because there are going to be people who haven't done what you want to do, who are going to tell you, that can't be done. Who are you to do that, right? They're going to be the detractors and distractors. And so you've got to focus on who's in and who's out. You talked about distribution, which is like, well, how many people are you going to reach? How many lives are you going to touch in your quest? And then, the bottom line is you got to move. You got to do something to be different. And that gets back to, well, who do you want to be? What do you want to be? And what step are you taking today to be different than you were yesterday and to be closer to who you say you want to be tomorrow? So just for me, when you're talking about like, this is how you write, this is how you produce a podcast, this is how you, this is how you become, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to point that out, that for any of the audience members, you're listening to this, you're watching this, it's like you're starting where you are right now. You're different than who you were. You want to be or have a life that's different than where you are. And whether that means you're writing or creating or podcasting, it's like, well, what step are you going to take to be that next level person? I just wanted to like tie a little bow on every little brilliant thing you said. So thank you.
No, I'm like in my head right now thinking about all the people who came. Like I'm thinking about Sharon Osbourne knocking down on my boss on my boss's door and saying that she doesn't know what it is that needs to happen, but something needs to happen. It's Osbourne's and it's MTV and it just feels right. And just keep thinking about it. Just keep thinking about it. And then eventually an idea came up that worked. We had some space, and then the network gave us an opportunity to test it out, and it ended up changing into genre.
Yeah.
Sometimes knowing what you want doesn't mean you know how to get there. That's where finding the who's help you close that gap. And I think that's what I love. That's how I'm using podcasting now. I come from TV. I was trained to network up. To be honest, I was trained. Who's the SVP? Who's the EVP? Who's the president? Know the power players. Let me tell you something about media. It is a peer-to-peer game. This I've never been. Nothing has. There's no more destabilized. Stabilized. I don't know. I don't know which way it is. But there's never been more of a feeling of TV producers, podcast producers, 1 year out of college, 30 years veteran network executive that have had the same seat at the table that I'm seeing now. It's just a brilliant time. And also the cool thing is like we're all kind of figuring out how our brands fit in this audio, video, digital world that we're living in. We're all asking ourselves this question. This is maybe something 20 years ago that I felt only people who want to be on TV ask this question. When you just described how I do what I do, I realized I've come up with a way to help people change their lives and do it responsibly because it's being recorded and millions of people are going to see it. This is so funny. Now I'm having, again, this like active observer, like I'm having this like moment again where I'm like, oh, that's so interesting that because I think I shared with you right before we started this call, when I went to school, I wanted to go to psychology. I went for psychology. I wanted to be a psychologist. I just thought that like that was a very serious job, and like didn't want to be responsible for changing people's lives. I don't know if you've been listening to this episode. My whole life has been focused on changing people's lives.
It absolutely has.
I bring humor and humility and an interesting human process to an otherwise cold media world. Now that we have rights, now that we have ownership over podcast and our space and what we can do with it, it's a really empowering time to help people feel empowered as creators on and off camera. Behind and in front of the mic. It's a really cool time right now, this like minute, to be able to offer my experience that I've had and still be as genuinely curious about how everyone creates, because that's what fuels a fire. I love that.
You're singing my language, really, when you talk about curiosity. I will often refer to Curious George being my spirit animal, and he gets into so much trouble, but he always finds a way through, and
he's got a process,
right? And for me, curiosity. When you live in curiosity, you can't live in judgment. When you're in this space of judgment, you're shutting so much out, and you're missing so much. And so, being able to say, okay, well, let's explore this creative process, and what does this one person have to bring, and maybe that sparks something else that this other person has to bring. And you're absolutely right that that there's this it's kind of I don't know, it's this flow, it's this now is such a great time to bring who you are. I think it's like just bring who you are. And
I see it that way too. By the way, and maybe it's not for everybody, but I'll say this: it is for me. So, like, reach out and say, share your experiences with me and connect with me. Now is a good time for me to connect with people at scale, at mass, and one-on-one. I've through podcasting and through speaking and through social media have found a really happy rhythm, and it's so invigorating, and it's very structured. By the way, I have a very corporate creative background, but I allow myself to get lost without needing to get lost. Like, as we say, I allow myself to. I'm very focused on getting lost. That makes sense.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's boost you a bit. Very very overtly, right? That it's like you are doing amazing things in the it's almost like the publicity space, right? That you are doing things in a way that you help people boost if you've got a podcast, if you've got a public presence of any kind, if you've got any foot in any of the public arenas, that you've got your eye on things where you go, well, have you done this and this? And so you're actually inviting people to work with you to do that, right? Specifically.
Yeah, I'm it's funny when you talk about something earlier about, like, if someone doesn't know how to do what you want to do, like, good. That means it hasn't been done yet. That means, like, now we're getting good. Now we're getting into the good stuff.
Yeah.
I love uncharted territories. I love helping people tackle uncharted territories. I'm good at complementing your core goal and helping you understand how to tap into an audience in a way that can help you. So we're a publicist. I work either directly with the business owner, the brand owner, or generally their publicist. The publicist can get you visibility. What I do is make you more shareable. The publicist will get you more visibility on television, on print. What I'm going to do is make your appearance more shareable. I help you understand how to be more interesting and intriguing. I help you understand what the audience might find to be fascinating about you, and what they also might find to have in common with you. And I help you understand how to use phrasing and talk to a large group of people with one specific person in mind without you needing to feel like you need to niche down and know your audience. It's not, sometimes we don't know, by the way, I would love to know my audience. And yes, I know there's an answer in there somewhere, and I can certainly, like, play by the books, and I can do audience development for you. But the truth is, when you get down to it, seat by seat, you're talking to an audience. I got my start in this TV industry by audience coordinating. So I know the value of those seats.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that. So anyway, that being said, that might be helping you do more interesting collaborations, appearing on new platforms in a unique way. It could be how you execute something, the technology that you use. It can be an award that you may be eligible for, you might not even know about. It could be a collaboration opportunity that you may have for yourself, or maybe another platform is looking for someone similar to you, and I can align, goals. For me, that's what it's about, is leveraging the 25 years of TV and public needs, and I'm very tapped into network mandates, and I get requests, and I know what platforms are looking for studio-based shows because they have a studio that they need to shoot in. So now so I know certain things that I can connect the dots on, and especially with true crime and some of those TV networks too. It's easy to. It's easy if you got what the networks are looking for, which is basically case exclusivity, then you're in good shape. But if you're the only person who can talk about a case, you're the only person who can talk in, and it's been adjudicated, then I can help you out pretty quickly with something like that. But
amazing.
I like the stories, the people who are creating those conversations around them. They're responsible, specifically Oxygen as well in the NBC world. It's not about the details of the crime. It's about the part of humanity that let this crime happen, and how did we get here, and the who of it all. So
I can't wait for you to write a book about all of this. It's kind of like, for you to go,
yeah,
this is what I saw.
Thanks.
And it looks like this, but the players were this. And that's like, again, it's sort of like it's an accordion style superpower. It's sort of like, it looks like this, but we niche it down and it's like this, but it's really this big. And it's I don't know. It's just the way you talk about stuff is it's compelling.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, no,
I'm compelled by it. That's good.
Yeah. And you draw us in, which is also good. Amazing. So here's the question. Like we're coming close to the end of our time together, and so the questions that I like to ask are, and I'll lump them all together for you.
Sure.
Which is basically, what didn't I ask that you were hoping I'd ask? What else do you want to share, and how can people contact you? Oh boy.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn is the best place if you're looking for a social connect. LinkedIn is the best place for me. I also have VPE.tv, where I have a creator hub. Anything that I've talked about in this episode, I have. I know that there's a lot of great strategists and strategy that's out there. I really tried to focus on tactics. So our creator hub is literally, I talked about, awards that you may be worthy of winning, and some other ways to stand out. I have literal step-by-step guides, all for free on the Creator Hub. I'm very passionate about supporting the information that I put out there. Do I really get to answer that first? What do I wish that you asked me? That you still have time to ask me this question. So not to put you on the spot, but I wish you would have asked me to come back.
Hey, Vinnie.
Yeah.
I would love it if you'd come back.
Yes.
Would you?
By the way, I really appreciate that. Two things. One, I really want that. Two, what a cool lesson of, I'm blushing right now, of asking for things that you want in the moment when you want them, instead of like some awkward, weird phone call. And also, if he said no, he could have edited it out. So I was giving him options.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, but I would love to.
But here's right. So I have a rule, which is ask me anything. And it's you're going to get an honest response. And if it's something like, well, I choose not to answer that, that's the honest response. If you are asking me, hey, will you ask me back? I could say, well, I have this rule of, blah, blah, blah. I don't have rules. It's like, you know what? I'd love to have you back. I think you've got a wealth of information. So yes, our audience will see you again. I will see you again. So I love that. Yes.
Yeah. By the way, so for people who are listening this deep into the episode, then let's get some feedback. Let's get some notes, and send me some thoughts and questions. And I will find where you post this, and we'll start a little chat right there so that people know how to throw some questions our way. But changing people's lives is something that I didn't really I kind of worked at MTV. I saw it as a form of entertainment, and I took it really responsibly. And I've seen it for the better and for the worst, by the way. I think that what we have now is the ability to have ownership for one of the first times in that's out there, ownership over our voice, our likeness, our image, and not have to go through some of the public gates to be able to get our podcast seen on broadcast networks. And I want to help people expand and reach and make real big impact. And I think we can do that individually and as a group, and through podcasting, it makes it really easy to do so.
It's amazing. Yay. All right. So with that, I will say thank you. Vinnie Postestivo has been our guest, my guest, our guest today. Will you tell me one thing? Have I been pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yeah. How'd you say Postestivo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Postestivo. That's
Postestivo. Right. Very good. Because I know
this is I'm coming out of the holidays with one side of majority of my family saying Postestivo.
Yes. I
say what they say, very American Postestivo. But I said, no, Postestivo is more American because Italian, it would be Postestivo. So it's either do it or don't. But that weird thing in the middle, that feels more American to me than where I'm taking it, but it's a lot of syllables, and it's nice to hear it out there. I'll say it that way.
All right. Very good. Either way, it's Vinnie Postestivo. Find him continuing listening here. Vinnie, thank you. Truly
thank you.
All righty. I appreciate it. This is one sharp sword cutting through to what matters most. And I call it one sharp sword versus 1,000 dull knives. Every so often I bring that up. So one sharp sword cutting through to what matters most. I've had Vinnie Postestivo with me today. I am Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach. Thank you for being here.